You thought I was feeling you? That nigga a munch. Nigga either he ate it for lunch. Bitch on my body, I get what I want. Like, you thought I was feeling you? That nigga a munch. Nigga either he ate it for lunch. Bitch on my body, I get what I want. Like, bitch stay mad, let's keep it a beam. Don't they be mad, I be on the scene. Ass too fat, can't fit in a jean. Use my stitch, but it's not what it seems.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Someone Had to Say It podcast. My name is Katlaho Dingake.
And I'm Rifile Dingake, and we are your hosts. If you're new here, go ahead and smash that subscribe or follow button because we guarantee you'll love what you hear.
And if you've been here before, we're happy that you're back for more. So how are you doing, Fifi?
I'm quite tired, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really tired from this week, but I'm really excited to be recording an episode. I'm just really tired. So I know last week I said I don't have caffeine during the weekend, but I am drinking coffee. So yeah.
You could have gone for decaf, you know.
No, but I needed the caffeine because my body, I'm actually exhausted, you know. So I needed the pick me up, you know.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit loud. Please excuse the background noises. We are recording outside, so there are a lot of external factors that we cannot control sound-wise.
But we hope the mics are helping a little bit.
Yeah, with making us more audible.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, that's good that you're good.
How are you feeling?
I'm doing good. I got my hair done this week, got my nails done this week.
Slay.
Yeah, so I'm feeling good. And I'm going back to Joburg. Mixed emotions. I love Joburg, but I also really have grown to love being home. It wasn't always that way because I was so used to being independent, and coming home felt like it took that away from me.
Yeah.
But I think in the last 2 to 3 years, I've kind of switched my perspective on what being home is for me. And so I truly enjoy being home.
Yeah.
So it's not easy for me to leave, but I also know that I'm going to a place that I still enjoy. So yeah, bittersweet.
Yeah, bittersweet.
But we good out here.
So what are we talking about today, Katie?
What are we talking about today? Today we are talking about logic versus emotion and whether or not the two can coexist. What's your take on that? Are you more logical or emotionally inclined when it comes to your reasoning?
I would say if you had asked me a few years ago, I'd be like, I think I'm quite a logical person. I almost took pride a little bit in being more analytical and more logical, more leading with my head than my heart. But as I've gotten older, I've realized the importance of listening to your feelings, listening to your heart. Even if you can't explain it in clear-cut English, sometimes a feeling is a feeling and you need to listen to yourself. So I've been trying to delve more into being a little more emotional and maybe leading a little more with my heart. So I say I'm a bit of both. It depends what the situation is. But I think, I'm a bit of both. I think different situations call for different approaches. Yeah. So I'm a bit of both.
Okay. I'd say I'm a bit of both too. I think I would like to believe I balance it well. I feel like it's part of why I overthink though. I weigh out a lot of possibilities or perspectives before I can conclude on something. So in emotionally charged situations, I am emotional. I'm more emotional than logical in that kind of situation because, like you said, I've also learned to listen to my feelings a bit more, to acknowledge them and then to process. I will allow logic to enter the room after I have processed emotion if it's a situation that requires emotion to be at the forefront. But in situations where I feel like it's easier for me to be logical, in situations where I'm the objective party, I'm on the outside looking in.
Yeah, that's true.
So when I'm observing someone being emotional, I don't want to say overly emotional, but when I'm watching someone react emotionally to a situation, it's so much easier for me to rationalize and be logical in that moment because I can see things a way that they're not able to in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm a bit of both. When it comes to me being emotional, I definitely give space to feel that and to go through that before, but the logic definitely kicks in after, where when I'm like, okay, we felt this, we've gone through this has happened, what now? That's when the logic kicks in and I'm like, okay, we can move, you know.
Yeah.
It's important, I think, to give space for both to exist. And so yes, I do, in short, I do
Yeah.
think the two can coexist, but I think in coexisting, each one has to have their time, their moment.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Why?
Like, do you mean like in any given situation, like logic has to have its situation and then like
For
emotion?
example, yes,
Okay.
I feel like they have to have their own time. For example, like I said, it's easier for me to be logical or more rational when I am observing someone else go through an emotional situation. So, should that person come to me for advice whilst they're emotional, it's so much easier for me to give advice rooted in logic. Whereas sometimes that's not exactly what they want to hear at that moment or what they need in that moment. In that moment, they may need more compassion, which is more emotionally inclined. They don't need you to say, oh, well, there's a simple solution to this. Another
Yeah.
example, say that in a relationship, right? When people always say this, that men tend to try to rationalize or bring logic into situations that are emotionally charged, which can make their partner feel invalidated. Okay, let's say in a heterosexual relationship, it can make the girl feel invalidated when she's here telling you, okay, ABC happened and this is how it's made me feel. And then a typical response from a guy tends to be something like, oh no, but like, that's not what I meant to do, so why would you feel that way? Or I wouldn't feel that way if this happened, or that kind of thing, where just because they can't relate or they wouldn't react or respond the same way, they tend to feel like, okay, you're wrong to feel that way because it doesn't make sense. Right?
Yeah. I get. Okay. Continue.
And then it's that thing where it's like, okay, it invalidates someone's feelings because at the end of the day, what you are looking for is for your feelings to be validated, even if that wasn't your partner's intention. So they can be like, okay, no, I hear where you're coming from and I see that it has upset you. I'm sorry that that's how it was received. It was not my intention. That's a good apology. Whereas usually I feel guys who do not try to tap into just recognizing that, okay, this person is emotional about this right now, let me just validate their feelings. Guys who don't do that or aren't aware that they should do that tend to be quick to shut it down and be like, hey, but like, that's not what I meant to do. Kind of like, it's not on me that you're feeling the way that you're feeling.
Yeah. That's definitely wrong. But I do feel like when you're saying in emotionally charged scenarios, like you said, an example would be if in a heterosexual relationship, the girl is upset about something, that's an emotionally charged scenario. I think, like many conversations, this is a very nuanced conversation and it really depends on the energy. Because sometimes I understand that sometimes people come to you to vent and, you don't necessarily always have to be the voice of reason. But I don't agree in the sense that, like, each situation, like, either logic or emotion deserves its time. Like, I feel like sometimes, in the name of balance, sometimes emotional situations need a logic or a voice of reason. It doesn't necessarily have to be an equal voice of logic, but I feel like, for example, if you were to come to me and you're like, oh, this happened, and you're like completely, like you're really overwhelmed and that kind of thing, I could obviously see, okay, KT is bouncing off the walls right now. I feel like maybe, obviously, if you're, whatever the issue is, if it's, how do I say this? Okay, I feel like sometimes when you're emotional, you tend to blow things bigger than they actually are.
Yeah.
So I feel like in a situation like that, I should, or like I said, it's nuanced, but I would feel like I should kind of
Be the person to bring that
bring
down.
you down a little bit and see what it actually is and not let your emotions inflate the situation. So in that way, you need that balance. Obviously, like I said, nuanced. It depends what the
Yes.
situation is.
Yeah.
It depends what the issue is. But that's what I'm saying. I don't completely agree.
Because I was going to say, I get what you're saying, but where I don't agree is that I feel like my take on it is that when logic is applied to emotional situations in a moment where it's not needed, because like you said, nuance, definitely it depends on the situation at hand. But I find that in most situations where logic is applied at the wrong time, not to say logic shouldn't be applied, which is why I say that they can both coexist and apply to the same situation, but when you choose to bring it up is important. They can have their own moment of, okay, so maybe someone has their emotional breakdown or whatever it is they're going through. You hear them out, you comfort them, you give them that empathy, that compassion that they need. And then an hour later, when things have calmed down, you can be like, okay, but I also wanted to bring to the forefront that this is a different way that you could look at it, which is where the logic comes in, where emotions aren't heightened. Because I also feel like when emotions are heightened, it's very hard for people to be rational and to receive rational thinking. So it feels like throwing fuel to the fire, putting fuel to the fire when you kind of deliver the right message at the wrong time.
Yeah.
That's my take. That's why I say that I feel that they should have their own time. Like, they can coexist and apply to the same situation. But I do feel it's important to be able to have that discernment as to, okay, this is the right time for me to bring this up. And yeah, for sure, there are those situations where logic will be necessary in at the height of emotion. But that's where also discernment comes in, where you should be able to tell that, okay, this logic is needed right now in order to calm the fire or to, bring lower the emotions.
Because I think generally being more emotional makes you magnify a situation more. You know what I mean? I feel like it's like logic entails the art of detaching a little bit, and emotion you're fully within. Like, it's the opposite of detaching. Like, you're fully attaching to something. And I feel like obviously too much detachment can be not a good idea. It's not a good thing. But too much involvement can also really not be a good thing, So I feel like that's why I feel like a balance is important in any given situation. So the example again, if you're running to me erratic about something, I feel like I should maybe zoom out or help you zoom out a little bit. But like I said, it depends on the situation.
It depends on the situation, and I think you have to be very careful about that because, like I said, if it's a situation that can be where you can lower the emotions without using logic, you can calm someone down without telling them as it is. I feel like logic often entails telling someone as it is. It requires a certain straightforwardness, not in a blunt or rude or a tone that shows lack of emotion or caring. But it is a thing where it's like, okay, but have you realized that, you wouldn't be in this situation if you didn't do this?
Oh, not like that.
And you could do this instead.
Obviously, that goes into a different conversation of how you say things.
Delivery,
and how there's a difference between, some people will love to say, oh, I'm just real, but they just mean, you know what I mean? There's a difference. So that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's
think, it's a different conversation.
blunt.
But I think in this situation, when I say delivery, I'm not talking just tone. I'm talking just the time. Back to what we were saying.
But it's nuanced. So yes, I definitely agree with you that certain situation, maybe don't say it now. For example, I was listening to a podcast. I didn't finish the entire episode, so I don't want to comment on it prematurely. But I was listening to a podcast about it's. The title is, I think, something like "The Truth About Honesty." The title of the episode, and it's talking about when is the right time to be honest about something. And it made some example from some sitcom. I don't know what the sitcom is, but it was like in that sitcom someone couldn't dance, but they were having a great time, so in the moment you couldn't tell them, oh, you can't dance, but then afterwards if they like ask, or you know what I mean, like you don't always have to tell it as it is in the moment. So like I said, I didn't finish that podcast episode, so I can't comment on it, but I feel like that's a situation that you're making. And I'm saying, yeah, definitely those exist. But yeah, it's nuanced. You have to read a situation and know when the right time and place for certain advice or certain logic or emotion, you know?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think another thing why I'm so adamant about the two can coexist but should have their own space and their own time to be presented, I think, is because in situations where you're bringing in the logic into the situation to an emotional person, I think they tend to receive it the wrong way, generally speaking. They kind of don't feel heard or seen, or at least, speaking from some experiences that I've had, it tends to be a thing where you're reasoning differently, and so you get lost in the communication. Like, you're communicating but you're not hearing or understanding each other.
Literally
because
speaking two different languages.
You're speaking two different languages, and I think that's what I feel giving them their own time will help avoid that miscommunication and that misunderstanding. Yeah, but overall, could we then say that they can coexist?
Yes, and it's important for them to coexist.
Yeah.
I think we can. I also wanted, because we've spoken about situations that are emotionally charged and how I think sometimes they need a balance in terms of a voice of reason or logic. But we haven't spoken about situations, because I know I've had situations in my life where maybe I'm on the other side of the spectrum and I'm too detached, and how sometimes you do need a voice of emotion in those situations, you know what I mean? So I mean the balance in both ways. In emotional situations, I think you need a voice of reason, but also in extremely logical moments, you definitely need a voice of compassion, and you're a human being at the end of the day. You can't completely not have those feelings or not engage with emotion in any way. Yeah. So it works on both sides of the spectrum. Yeah.
So would you feel that we could have like any takeaway points as to how people can then balance that logic versus emotion in a general situation? Because like we said, it depends on the situation. But in a general situation, if someone is met with a situation where they are they're the logical entity and the other one's the emotional, and vice versa. Like, as the emotional person, how can you then create a space where the person who's trying to help you or be there for you still has room to be honest with you or to present that logic? Is it on the emotional person to give you that space? Because like we said, at that point, you're not very rational. Like, emotions, can cloud your judgment a bit. So, I don't know. Would we say that it's on the emotional person to even give you that space? Surely it's on the logical person or the person presenting logic to then be able to decipher, okay, this is what this person needs right now. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, as the logical party, do you have room to ask for your thinking to be accommodated from the person?
As the logical party in a highly emotional situation.
So, typical example being the argument between a couple where someone presents that, okay, this is what this made me feel like. and the logical party is the one who doesn't really understand or either did not intend for it to occur that way?
I think the onus is on both parties to leave space for each other. So I don't necessarily think, okay, it's on the emotional person to make sure the logical person is heard, or I don't think it's on the logical person to make space for, you know what I mean? Like, I think everyone should leave room for everyone. That's what I think.
Is it possible?
Obviously, it's difficult because everyone has their own beliefs. Like we said, logic and emotion, it's almost like you're speaking two different languages. And sometimes as human beings, it's difficult to, like when you hold a certain belief, it's hard to
let that go.
It's hard to see it from someone else's perspective. It's kind of like, how could you even think of it like that?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. That's where you have to... That's part of being a human. That's why it's encouraged to have conversation with people who have different beliefs than you, because you accommodate like hearing people out. Not necessarily that you have to agree with them, but you learn how to hear
different
people
perspective
out.
really helps.
Yeah. So I think it's like a training thing. Like you kind of have to get used to or learn how to accommodate other views and beliefs and all that kind of thing. It's difficult for sure. I think most people, that's why they say birds of a feather flock together. You tend to group with people who have similar beliefs and all that kind of thing as you, but it's something that is important. It makes you a more tolerant person, and it also makes you a more you're not set off as easily, because also you can listen to someone and you can think this is complete BS, but you can also acknowledge that that person has those
beliefs, and it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, and it won't bother you as much when you really accept that, hey man, people are different, it is what it is. You won't take it personal and get angry or upset or bothered by it because it doesn't align with what you think or believe.
Yeah,
I agree. Is there anything else that you wanted to say on the topic?
Nothing that I can think of.
Okay, so that is the end of this episode.
Yeah. That's all for today's episode, but the conversation doesn't have to end here.
We'd love to know what you thought of today's topic. Do you believe that emotion and logic can coexist? Pop us an email at shtsipod@gmail.com. Also, a reminder to follow us on our socials at someonehadtosayit.com. That's at someonehadtosayit, DOTCOM, on Instagram and TikTok.
And you can find our podcast on YouTube and Spotify at Someone Had to Say It.
We love you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye. I've been on the low. I've been taking my time. I've been out of my mind. Logic.
Fucking with niggas that's toting up beans. Saying you love me, but what do you mean? Pretty ass fucking you like that I mean. Got this bitch out, you shitting me? If you ain't a baddie, can't sit with me. I swear that these bitches my mini-me's. He wanna sex, niggas be dreaming. I'm from the X, niggas be scheming. I'm on their necks, they's not breathing.